You know, my text this morning is this passage from Matthew chapter 2. And you know, the one thing that I was working on when I was working on the sermon this week, I was thinking about the wise men or magi seeking Jesus. And I started thinking about seeking and looking. And you know what? One of the things that popped in my head was hide and seek, playing as a kid. And actually I played manhunt with the teenagers occasionally throughout the years on some confirmation and mission trips out in the woods and doing that. And manhunt is just a little bit older hide and seek, but it's the same premise of going out that way. And also I asked my question, well, do I seek anything nowadays or search for something? And you know what? The one thing I do, what searches I do probably a couple times a week. Have you ever done a Google search? Sometimes my kids will be reading a book that I read in high school, and sometimes to appear smarter than I really am, mice and men, I'll Google it, and it'll just refresh my memory what happened, and then so I look like I know what I'm talking about when I talk about the book again, still, and some of the things I do forget. And I Google search things all the time. And you know what I Google searched yesterday when I was working on the sermon? The top 10 Google searches of 2015. And it was a little different than I thought of around the world. They keep track of that. Every time somebody does a Google search on some topic or thing, they log the amount of times it's been done. And when I went in, I said, well, what's the most searched person or topic or thing? You may ask yourself that question. What do you think? The list was surprising when I went through. Here are the top 10 Google searches of 2015. And it helps if it happened earlier in the year, because then you had 12 months to go on. Number 10 was the movie Straight Outta Compton. Did any of you see the movie? Raise your hand if you saw it. Straight Outta Compton. It's about a hip-hop band coming out of LA. It's not, I must confess, I did not see the movie. So that was number 10, Straight Outta Compton. Number 9 was Fallout 4, a video game. Do anybody have it? Mike in the back has it. You guys have Fallout 4? Oh, Brennan has it. All right. Brennan, you have the full assortment of video games, right? All right, he does. And that's before my time. The number 8 search. And this person I knew something about, Chris Kyle, American Sniper. I saw the movie. He was the number 8 search, most common search in 2015. Number 7, another game, agar.io. I heard it's big in China and Asia. But it's not that big here, but I just know that part of the world drove that game was the 7th most common Google search. Number 6, which I thought would have been higher, was the Paris video. Paris terrorist attacks was the 6th most common Google search in all of 2015. Number 5, a woman. Ronda Rousey. Are any of you fans of Ultimate Fighting? And somebody jumping up and down like this one, in the early service when I said Ronda Rousey. So I'm familiar with her, but she lost the last fight, right? By somebody unnamed. Here's somebody else, I guess a woman. Caitlyn Jenner was number 4.
No.
Caitlyn Jenner was number 4 as the most common, the biggest Google searches of 2015. Number 3 was another movie, American Sniper. It was the 3rd most common video search of 2015. Number 2 was another movie, and it wasn't Star Wars. It was the big movie over the summer. Do you know what that was? Jurassic World. That was the 2nd most common Google search in all of 2015. Who has an idea what was the number 1 Google search?
What is Bay?
Huh?
What is Bay?
No? What do you have a guess? She's on it. You know what? It involves the Kardashians. And you know who the most common Google search of 2015 was Lamar Odom. He's a basketball player who married a Kardashian, and then over the summer, do you know what happened to him? He OD'd on cocaine and heroin at a brothel in Las Vegas. And he's been coming out of a coma, and and the question is how many of the Kardashians are going to visit him and what's going on. He was the #1 Google search in 2015. I don't know that much about the Kardashians. I do know they are trending, right? Isn't that what you say? They are trending in Googleese, you know, what they keep track of who's trending. And Lamar Odom, you know, when we started that, I would not have put down Lamar Odom as the #1 Google search in 2015. I thought it was going to be Trump, actually.
Or Star Wars.
Or Star Wars. But Lamar Odom was the #1 Google search. And you know what? You know, when I finished reading this, I sort of scratched my head and said,
That's what I thought.
well, that's different than I really would have searched, because a lot of these, there are a lot of things. Do you know 5 of them are really involve entertainment? There's 3 movies, American Sniper, Jurassic World, and the other movie was Jurassic World, American Sniper. No, it was the other movie. It was Straight Outta Compton, which I didn't see. Maybe I should see it. But 3 movies and then 2 games. Entertainment is important, and you know, people value entertainment. It involves a lot of things that go on. You know, we entertain, and actually, that's a big topic. Actually, when you do sermons, Kurt back there, Kurt, Bill, and I, one of the topics that comes up at sermons, and as we talk about sermons, do you tell jokes? Do you make it entertaining? Do you know I've had a few people leave Family of Christ for one issue because I told a joke and I made people laugh. And so here's the debate, you know, and here's the debate that it goes. And you know, I will tell funny stories at times, and you know, doing that. But they said, well, you can't make people laugh. Church is serious. Church is serious. This is heaven or hell business here. But the one thing is, God wants us to have a sense of joy.
Joyful noise.
God wants us to have a sense of joy. But church isn't entertainment, but that doesn't mean you never tell a story that makes people chuckle. You can go to the extreme. I was reading about one church, very prosperous church in this country, and the pastor wrote, well, we haven't mentioned Jesus in 12 weeks. Is that wrong or right? And I'd say that's wrong. You know, if the church has gone into so much into entertainment and feeling and emotions, they've really lost sight of the whole thing. You know, the passages, we're looking for Jesus. We're following Jesus. We're living for Jesus. You speak to people where they're at. Life has moments of absurdity, funny. I think Lamar Odom being the biggest Google search is a little bit funny. A little bit sad, too. Sometimes it's something so sad, the best thing you can do is just laugh about it. You know, 4 of the others here, when you look at this list, are about people, and people are great. I do love reading biographies, autobiographies, and one of the great things about life is people are all different. You know, when you find somebody who you agree on with almost everything, do you know what it can be? Boring. If you agree with somebody on everything, you know, it's like you're talking to yourself. Isn't that a little bit frightening? People are interesting, and I understand people. As Google searching people are very interesting in doing that. And you know, the other one that wasn't entertainment or people was the Paris attacks, and that's one topic I do want to talk about. I want to give a plug for our book club that meets every month, the last Sunday of the month at our house. At 6 o'clock, the book we're reading this month is Searching for Allah and Finding Jesus. And I'm also working in conjunction with that, maybe 1, 2, or 3 Sundays, a discussion of Islam, what is Islam, what's going on. And that's going to happen. I know the last Sunday of the month is going to happen. But of dealing with that and talking about, well, what about ISIS? What do we do with ISIS? Because that's what I think God wants us to. I'm not going to preach on the Kardashians, but I do think we should talk about ISIS and Muslim and Islam in the church. Because we're about searching and following Jesus and how he relates to every situation. And you know these wise men, and you know that name, this is one of the most difficult words, sometimes are hard to translate from one language to another, and this Persian word, magi, it's plural. We don't know if there was 3 of them or if there was 2 of them or if there was 5 of them. We don't really know. It doesn't say 3. Well, I always assume there was 3 of them because there was 3 presents, right? Could have been 2 and somebody brought 2. There could have been 5 and they brought 3 gifts that they record. We don't know exactly how many there were. But it's a Persian name, and the name really talks. You could translate it wise men. You could translate it astrologers. You could translate it astronomers. You could have translated philosophers. You could have translated noblemen or kings. But they were 3 people or 3 or unknown number coming from far away, probably from Persia. You know, the language is Persian. That's present-day Iran. About 600 miles by camel, coming all the way, and they're searching for Jesus. They're searching for this newborn king. You know, to show you how different sometimes the world is. I remember a movie back when I was a kid, and I've seen it a couple of times, and it was called Amal and the 3 Visitors. I don't know if you've ever seen it. NBC produced it. It was a video, it was an opera movie that they produced to show in prime time at Christmas time. And it was a story about the 3 kings coming to Bethlehem. And they came to this home in Bethlehem looking for Jesus, this poor widow who had almost nothing, and her son was crippled and couldn't walk and used a crutch to get around. And the movie starts, the kings are looking for Jesus, and they come and knock on this door, and it's the home of Amal and her son, the widow and her son Amal. And she says, go answer the door. And he goes to answer the door and opens the door, and there's these 3 extravagantly dressed kings. She runs back in the house and says, Mom, there are 3 kings at the door. And she said, you're crazy. Why would 3 kings be knocking at our door in the middle of nowhere in the town of Bethlehem? And there's another knock at the door. And both of them go out and they open the door, and there are the 3 kings. They say, we're searching for this newborn king. And she says, come in, come in, come in. And one of them comes in, each of them are carrying a bag, and the one drops down and drops this big bag of gold with a thud, and some gold coins start spilling over the side. And the woman's wondering, oh, maybe I could get some of that gold. She's figuring out if she can grab some of the gold. But then she hears about the story about this newborn king coming from far away in the east. They followed his star, and they heard in Jerusalem he's supposed to be born, and he's here in Bethlehem. Where is he? And she says, I don't know, but I wish I had something to give him. And then as the movie goes on, Amal says, I wish I had something I could give Jesus, but I don't have anything. The only thing of value I have is this crutch. And before the kings leave, you know what Amal does? He walks with his crutch over to the kings, and he hands one of them his crutch and says, you know what? This is the only thing that's of value to me. Let me give it to Jesus. And then you know what happens to him? He can walk. Watch for the movie on cable sometime. But you know what I thought? When I thought about that movie, NBC made it their prime feature for Christmas for like 15 years. From 52 to 66. They don't do that now, do they, so much? We're in a Kardashian world today, right? It's very different. But we, as the church, are all about seeking Jesus. And what we celebrate, he's not hiding. Jesus came out, and as we find and as we go through the year in the gospel readings, you know what? Jesus stepped into the middle of crowds. He was bold and said, you know what? Listen to me. I am the Son of God. He did meet cripples, and you know what he did after he met a cripple? They could walk. When he met the blind, they could see. When he met sinners, what did they find? Forgiveness and grace. Do you know, it's interesting. I went through the concordance. The concordance lists all the verses And I went through the Bible yesterday looking at all the verses that had seeking and searching for God. And you know, one thing came up more and more often that stuck in my head. In the Psalms and Proverbs, it says, search for God with all your heart, and you know what you're going to do? You're going to find him. Sometimes I meet people and ask them, well, what's your faith like? Do you believe in God? And sometimes people will tell me, you know what I did? I had a problem 10 years ago, and I said, God, fix this problem right now, and I'll believe him. And I'll tell them, you know, that's not really searching for God. That's making a demand of God. Search for God with all your heart, and you're going to find him. That's making Jesus the first priority. That's what the kings did. The wise men, whatever you want to call them. They got on a camel and went 600 miles one way, looking for Jesus. And they found him. The other verse that really stuck out when I went over this concordance study is what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew chapter 7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. Seek God. Seek Jesus. You're going to find him. Ask. And you know what? Things happen. It doesn't always happen on our timetable, but it happens. Knock and the door will be open to you. Do you know, I read that verse and it reminded me, I think I may have done this in a sermon years ago. It was a story from one of my favorite Christian authors, Tony Campolo. And Tony says one of the more memorable experiences of his whole faith life, he was a college professor, but he spoke at Christian youth events all around the country. He said he was speaking at one gathering of Pentecostal youth. And Pentecostals, before he spoke, they had him sit down in a chair and they had about 10 people gather around him. They put their hands on him and they prayed for him. And we do that at ordinations. We do that sometimes for ordination, special events, or a blessing. And he said they put their hands on and the prayers would come and say, you know, Tony, speak God's word. May you see his face. And they went around. But he said near the end of it was getting long. He was ready to go to give his talk. And this one guy had his hands on him and says, Lord, help Charlie. Charlie Stuffles. He's leaving his wife and kids today, and he told me he's leaving the house and he's never coming back. And God, you know where he lives. He lives in the Silver Trailer, a mile north of here, 513. On the right side of the street, a mile north of here. Bring him back home. And Tony says he's listening to this prayer and saying, why is he telling God his address? That's the stupidest prayer I've ever heard of in my life. God knows everything. But he had a great time. He spoke at the conference that evening, and then he was going home. He lived about 2 hours north on the interstate. He was getting on the interstate on the entry ramp, and all of a sudden there was this guy standing on the side of the road with his thumb out, looking to hitch a ride. He was in a good mood and was lonely, so he said he pulled over, opened the door, and the guy got in the car, and they started talking. He said, where are you going? He said, I'm just going north. And he said, well, I'm going about 2 hours north. I can take you that far, and then I'll have to let you out. And then Tony said, well, I introduced him. My name's Tony. What's your name? And he said, Charlie. Charlie Stuffles. He said goosebumps went up and down his body. And he said, where are you going? He said, I don't know. I'm just getting out of town. Never coming back. He made small talk for a minute, and then all of a sudden he made a quick U-turn on the interstate. And Charlie said, wait a minute, I thought we were going north. And he said, well, we got just one quick stop. Hold on, we'll get you where you need to go. He drove back past where he spoke. He went a mile north, 513, a silver trailer on the side of the road. He drove into the driveway, parked the car, and Charlie said, do I know you? And Tony said, no, you don't know me. But Jesus knows you. Took him out of the car, knocked on the door, his wife answered the door, and he brought Charlie back home. Sort of freaked Charlie out. And Tony said it freaked him out a little bit too. But somebody who was lost, who was found, Tony knocked and the door was open. But Tony said those two people were ready to hear about Jesus because he was there. In 2016, seek God with all your heart. And you're going to see him, you're going to experience him in new and incredible ways.